For almost all of human history, it used to be the case that as our technology got better, our ways of communicating with each other got faster and more efficient. But we may actually be witnessing the breakdown of that in real time, where, for the first time that I am aware of in history, an advancement in our technology is making the way that we communicate with each other slower and worse. It's very easy to see that this was the case, right? It used to be, back when humans were still like very early agrarian societies, that you could only really talk to the people in your village. And if there were other people far away, you might not even know that they existed, let alone be able to communicate with them. And then eventually we started making all these technological advancements that made the communication better. We got postal services and the ability to send letters. And now you could talk to people from far away, but it took forever and it was kind of expensive and it was kind of inconvenient. And now, with the invention and widespread adoption of the internet, you can talk to pretty much anyone pretty much instantly, which is super cool. But something has started to happen as all of the tech companies have been shoving AI and LLMs into everything that can possibly withstand them, and that is that for the first time we're starting to see people make communication less efficient under the pretext of making it more efficient. Imagine how many times every day the following is happening. One coworker needs to send an email to another, so they write up a list of 5 quick bullet points that's the information they need to get across. They hand that off to ChatGPT and say, take this information and write it into some professional and beautiful sounding email. They then take that, throw it in an email, send it over to person B, and then they get that email and they're like, oh, this is a long email. I'm a busy guy. I got to take this, throw it into AI, boil it down to 5 bullet points. Both people on both ends of that communication want to only be dealing with the bullet points. That's the actually efficient form of communication, is if they just sent the bullet points over. But each person is expecting the other person to expect them to communicate in a way that is professional. I think there is a connection here to the French psychoanalyst and philosopher Jacques Lacan, who had a lot of really interesting and super complicated ideas, but the only one that we're going to talk about here is something that he called the big other. Lacan was a member of a school of psychoanalysts who had this idea that the human mind and subconscious was structured like language and structured by language. And so part of his thesis was essentially that as we come up in the world and we learn the language of the world around us, what he called the semantic order, we would start learning all of the little relationships, expectations, social rules, cues that are baked into that world and internalizing that as part of our reality. If you ever learned a language that was not your mother tongue, you've probably felt something like this happen. As you start to explore the fringes of where that language is very different from your own, it changes the way that you think a little bit because you're absorbing new social cues and new ways of thinking about the world. So Lacan's argument was basically that as we learn all of this language, we construct this fictitious, hypothetical, big other person, who is this entity that is kind of always watching us like God, who is the kind of embodiment of all of the social norms and expectations and behavioral taboos that we have internalized from our world and the language that we use to describe it. There's a little joke that the philosopher Slavoj Žižek likes to tell to illustrate this, which is that 2 people go on a date, they have a really good time over dinner, and then eventually the man walks the woman back to her home, and she says to him, would you like to come in for some coffee? To which he responds, I'd love to, but I don't drink coffee, and she retorts, that's fine, I don't have any coffee. Both of them know that the intent of him coming inside is not simply to have coffee, it's to have fun time. But they can't both simply come out and say that because, as Lacan would argue, they are both aware that the big other would judge them for doing that. Even though they both want the same thing, even though they both have good reason to believe that the other person wants the same thing, even though there is no one around to judge them, they would nonetheless feel judged by the big other. And that's what the role of the big other is in these sorts of relationships. He judges you even when you're alone. And the reason that I bring this up is that I think it helps us understand the coworkers who are communicating through the cloud of AI. Even though both of them know that they're probably better off just sending the 5 bullet points, it's easier to write and it's easier to read, they are being told by the big other that is not how you communicate in business. Business emails must be formal and well laid out. Now, Lacan's argument is that the Big Brother is always hindering conversations in this way. That's why in the joke about the couple and the coffee, the woman must ask the man, do you want to come in for a cup of coffee, as opposed to, do you want to come in for some fun time, because they would be judged for saying the latter. The difference here is that with the AI, what we're doing is we're offloading the extra work. We're offloading that smuggling to the AI. We have already shaken it off. We're no longer the ones doing the work of writing the long email, but we're still pretending as if we are anyways. And that's the thing I think has never happened before. Normally, we don't get to shake off the work, but here we've been able to, only because the AI affords us the modesty of pretending that we haven't.